So the second step in crafting your character is accepting who you are. And this can somewhat seem like a contradiction in some sense to the first step, because it's you're saying, you're asking me to choose who I want to be, and then you're saying accept myself as I am now. I've found in life there tends to be a lot of these contradictions. It seems like a contradiction or a paradox almost. It's like you need to push to become your best self, and you also need to accept exactly who you are. But I think that's the kind of magic of life. There's no certain, like, this is the one way to do it. It's like you kind of have to work on both sides of yourself. So you have to work on the accepting and the becoming, and the being and the becoming, or whatever way you want to put it. And so that's why it can be hard to put these things down into, steps, even though I've tried. But I suppose for me, accepting who you are now is such an important step, because if we just decide who we want to be and, strive to be someone without actually accepting ourselves as we are, then we can kind of leave a part of ourselves behind. And the part of ourselves that we leave behind, or we leave it in the shadow, then I suppose we don't feel whole, we don't feel fulfilled when we achieve that goal. So you think of maybe Andre Agassi as an example that always pops into my mind. His father, since he was 2 years old, had him out hitting tennis balls back to him because he wanted to make him into the best tennis player in the world. And I suppose Andre, being only 2 years old, didn't have much choice in the matter. And he went on and became one of the best tennis players in the world, and he won Wimbledon. But when he won Wimbledon, he went into a severe depression because he'd never actually looked inwards and accepted who he was. He was just built to be something else. And I suppose that kind of links in with the first step in choosing who you want to be. He didn't necessarily choose that person, but I suppose it's just about realizing there's parts of ourselves that maybe we have neglected, or maybe we haven't tapped into, or maybe that we're afraid to look at because we don't like those parts. And for me, I struggled with some shame around areas of my life and parts of myself that I didn't fully want to accept. And it was easier for me to, choose this other version I wanted to be and move towards my ideal Cormac, who's perfect almost in my mind, and moving towards him and leaving behind these parts that I don't want to look at and I don't want to accept. And it's only been in the last couple of years really that I've really went into that shame and into those areas that I've neglected for quite a while. But I put it as step 2 because if I had done it earlier in my journey, maybe it would have made the journey easier, because when we accept who we are right now as we are, then we can start to build from that foundation. If we push it away, then we're kind of building on this unsteady ground, and those parts of shame will kind of pull you back. If you're trying to be, say, a public speaker, even myself, I've struggled with doing these videos, put myself out. I've tried it, and then I do it for a while, and then I kind of fall back into the shadows, almost hiding. And I think shame can do that to us when we want to share things, and we want to be in the world, and we want to be out there and be ourselves. But there's a fear if we do that, then we might be seen fully, and then those parts of ourselves that we don't want to be seen will be witnessed by others. And that's a scary thing. So that shame kind of keeps us small and keeps us hidden. And after doing a lot of work on going into that shame over the last number of years, I've, I suppose, liberated myself from that fear, because now I know what was in there, what shadow things were there that I wasn't willing to look at. And I suppose it's like any hero's movie or fairy tale. It's like the dragon is in the dark cave, and when you go in there, you realize it's actually not that scary, and it might even be a friendly dragon. sometimes you may have to slay the dragon, but you go in there and you realize afterwards you're not afraid anymore. And yeah, I think it's not a conscious thing, this being afraid to be seen. It's very unconscious or subconscious, and you might not even realize that you have shame. But I think we all have some sort of shame or some sort of guilt or some sort of feeling of unworthiness that we're kind of running away from. And when we start to just accept that, first of all, acknowledge it, and I suppose acknowledgement is the first part, or having that awareness that, oh, there is part of me that doesn't feel good enough, or doesn't feel lovable, or is ashamed of my body, or is ashamed of how I talk or how I look. And once you kind of have that awareness, you can start to work on the acceptance part, which can take a while. I've had great guides and mentors to help me with this, and I've found practices, meditation practice and different practices to really help me move into this in a healthy way and move through it and not get stuck in it, because I think, shame is such a heavy thing that we can get stuck in the heaviness of the shame, and we can feel, oh, I'm terrible. And so there's ways of doing this. In the book there is some exercises, but again, I think the book is just a starting point. If you do want to go into this stuff, it's great to get a mentor or someone that can guide you through the process as well, because there's a great quote that says, shame gets its power from being unspeakable. So by just doing the work on your own, I think there's an element of, you're still kind of hiding it a little bit because it's just you. So getting someone else, and I've seen this in men's groups where we share what is really like going on inside in a group of men in a safe container, confidential container, where we know and trust each other, that there's a liberation that comes with that, because it's now in the open, and it's like, and you can breathe, and it's like, oh wait, when I said it wasn't actually as bad as I thought it was going to be, and there's a couple of lads over there with their hands up saying, I feel that too. And I think that's one of the real powers of working in groups with people, is that shared experience that we tend to all have. And I think shame, especially as an Irish man, it's such a big thing in Ireland, and I'm sure obviously across the world as well. But we've particular, I suppose, upbringing with the Catholic Church that tends to, they use shame as a way of maybe controlling people and keeping people down. And so I think, that's step number 2, not to scare you from reading the book. Maybe I should have left it till near the end. But yeah, these things, like I say in the book, they're a cyclical process. It's a kind of a spiral, really. It's not a straight path. You don't just choose who you want to be, accept who you are, work on your shame, and then you're free to keep going on the rest of the journey. You kind of keep coming back to these things. I'm constantly coming back to these, things, but I feel every time I come back, it's not as heavy, and it's another layer. So it's like a lighter layer. And I suppose there's obviously fear for people to go into this and do this work. But for me, it's the liberation that comes after going into it is so worth the, facing that fear. And yeah, I suppose for me, it's becoming who I know I can be, so I can reach my potential and, start to live out my mission in the world. And that's enough of a drive for me to go into these dark places and go into these places that most people, or many people, are afraid to look. So yeah, I hope you took something from this video. And again, if you would like the book, just let me know. I have lots of copies here I can send, and it's available on Amazon. You can check out the link in the description. And yeah, look forward to speaking again with you soon.